Hey you, yeah, I'm talking to you. Are you looking for another deck sesh? We've got one for you. On this episode of The Elder Stronghold, we've got Ivora Insatiable Air. This is going to be a mono red commander. We're going to take her from start to finish, giving you 100 cards all the way through to the end where we're going to show you some stats and some sample hands. So, pull up a chair if you don't have one, and sit on down. Ivora the Insatiable Air is a 1-1 for 2 mana. This girl's got trample on her and the ability to get +1/+1 counters anytime we discard. If we read her, she says, when Ivora Insatiable Air enters, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a blood token. This is going to be one of the things that helps us fuel her own engine. Speaking of engines, this girl's got endless hunger. What are we going to do to fuel this endless hunger? We're going to call onto the butcher. The reason why is this allows us to discard it anytime we need to actually shuffle our graveyard back into our library. Library of Lang does have some conditional specific things regarding discarding, so be careful how you use this, but it's going to allow us sometimes to discard to the top. Bag of Holding allows us to take some of those cards that we discard, put them into exile underneath it, and then bring them back to our hand. On top of that, we've got Currency Converter. Just like that old Bag of Holding allows us to pay to draw a card and discard, but allows us to get some of those cards value even after the fact. Finally, we got Containment Construct. This guy's going to allow us to have a little bit of a blocker up early on if we need it, but more importantly, when we discard a card, we can actually play it until end of turn, and notice it says play. That means if it's a land that we discarded, we can still throw that on the battlefield for the land for churn. This is going to help us out with that endless hunger for this Insatiable Air, but this girl is thirsty. So what's next on our thing? How about some Thirst Quenchers? To start us off with these Thirst Quenchers, we've got a piece of equipment. This is Mask of Memory. The best thing about this guy is it fuels our commander by allowing us to draw 2 cards when she deals combat damage to a player and then discard a card. In addition, it's going to stay out in the battlefield for us anytime someone tries to wipe out a commander, and it equips for 1. Cathartic Pyre comes in next, giving us 2 options, either to do some target removal if it's necessary, or discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many cards. We're going to have a lot of these types of things in the deck, and here's the next one, Faithless Looting. For 1 red, we've got this oldie classic. Draw 2 cards, discard 2 cards, however, it's got flashback. Then we've got Thrill of Possibility, bringing us back into instant speed interaction here, where we're going to be able to discard a card, draw 2, and remember that discard card is going to fuel our commander, and so is Big Score at the top end here with 4 CMC. At 4 CMC, we're going to discard this card, we're going to draw some cards, and we're going to create some treasures. This is how we're going to start to quench that thirst of our Insatiable Air, Ivora. But is this girl going to be thirsty still after this? I wonder. Okay, if she's still thirsty, let's keep feeding her. Let's start off with some Cathartic Reunion here, discarding 2 cards this time and drawing 3. Again, those cards are going to give her counters +1/+1 each. Highway Robbery. This new card is going to allow us to put it out on a plot so we can use it later on when we want to basically do the same thing we've been doing, or sacrifice a land instead of discarding a card. Demand Answers is going to allow us to discard a card or sacrifice an artifact to then draw 2 cards. We may want to use the discard feature to fuel our commander, or sacrifice an artifact if we like what we have in hand. And then Doretti is going to wrap this one up by giving us a permanent on the field with a +2, discard up to 2 cards, then discard that many cards feature, and a way to kind of bring back some of this equipment that we're going to see spliced throughout this video. Finally, we're going to wrap up Still Thirsty section here with Ceremonial Knife. Speaking of that equipment, this one gives us more blood tokens onto the battlefield, and notice it says specifically combat damage. It does not reference damage to a player. So we can equip this to any creature and start to really fuel getting those blood tokens out there, especially some of those double strikers. So what's our thirst ender going to be for this? Well, it's got to be something good, and the best thing we can find right now is going to be the old trusty archive, allowing us to draw additional cards off of those draws that we use with pretty much 24 of the cards that are already in this deck. Alright, so we need some pawns to help us out either early on or late game to finish it up. So let's start off with Goldhound here. First strike, Menace, 1 mana to bring this guy out, and he also acts as a mana rock if we need to later on in the game or even early on. Rabbit Battery, when you find that you're playing creatures or commanders that like to attack a lot, people like to wipe them out. So when they wipe the board, this reconfigure is going to allow us to have a creature still in the field if it's in a reconfigure status. Lizard Blades, this guy's great, giving us double strike onto any creature. And remember, our commander does have already on her Trample. We're going to be giving her tons of counters out there, so let's see what else we can do here by adding in not only this one, but Phyrexian Dragon Engine with the double strike innately built on it. One of the best things about this engine is we can unearth it later on after it's gotten wiped off the field to allow us to fuel some more draw and discard features. Brass Squire is a underdog in this deck, allowing us to attach equipment just by tapping him. The best part about this is we can use this as combat tricks. There's going to be tons of equipment spliced throughout this video here, and to be able to attack in with a couple creatures, the opponent doesn't know which one the equipment's going to stay on because we can move it at any time. Alright, so if that's going to start us off with what we call the pawns, what's going to bring in the backup for us here? And the backup that we're going to need is going to be some good creatures spliced from low CMC to high CMC. So after we request that backup, first card on the list is going to be Ragavan. This guy is awesome. Not only is he a legendary creature that we can swap into the commander if we want to, but he's got the dash feature on him, gives us a treasure token, and you equip this guy up with some of these double strike things, we're stealing a lot of stuff from our opponent. He is a classic to play in any mono red deck, but let's move on to the next one, Dreadhorde Arcanist. Dreadhorde Arcanist is got Trample built right into his features. He's a 1/3. And what we're going to do with this guy is be able to cast instants and sorceries out of our graveyard. Remember, we're casting a lot of instants and sorceries that have to do with draw and discard and some to keep the battlefield clear for our own attackers. Dragon's Rage Channeler, 1 mana for a 1/1, however, allows us to surveil by casting some of our other spells, and it's got Delirium, and we're definitely going to hit that Delirium, so this is going to become a 3/3 with flying. Equip this guy if you need to finish off your opponents. Neheb coming in next is going to be one of our big beaters. This guy's a 5/4 trample built onto him, and he's got some discard features and mana generation built into his whole attack phase. The best part about this is we equip this guy up, give him some double strike, and we've got a lot of draw and discard going on for our commander, pumping tons of +1/+1 counters onto her. Finally in this one, we're going to wrap it up with Backdraft Hellkite. This flyer coming in at a 4/4 again gives us the ability to cast instants and sorceries from our graveyard, whether it's to draw and discard or to clear the battlefield. So if that's our backup, what else do we need to kind of round out the creatures here? Well, I would like to say we want some creatures that are going to be able to finish the game for us and round out our own defenses. So let's bring in Blood Knight. This guy starts off with first strike protection from white. We know everybody likes to play Path of Exile and wipe out our creatures, but this one's got that pro white built in so they can't touch him. He's also a great one to suit up with any of this equipment that we have in the deck or hold back as a deterrent from any of those nasty attackers. Plague Mirror's got that Infect right on his tagline here, and nobody wants to die to Infect in Commander. So we play this guy down early game. He's a mana ramp for us. He's also a deterrent from attackers, but we suit him up late game if we need to finish off an opponent by hopefully hitting them for 10 Infect in one single turn. One more with those reconfigure creatures that we've got in this deck is going to be that Simian Sling. This guy gives our equipped creature +1/+1. And it allows us to throw a little bit of damage around, but more importantly, we know people like to wipe the battlefield, so you like to take these reconfigured guys, put them on a creature, and then they're safe from those board wipes. Twin Shoot Sniper here, or Twin Shot Sniper, he's got 2 damage when he enters the battlefield, but his channel ability is what's awesome because it's going to fuel our commander by giving her a +1/+1 counter and deal 2 damage to any target, and hopefully get some of those small creatures out of our way. Another one that does something similar here is going to be Ghostlit Raider. Now, we could put him down on the battlefield and have that constant 2 damage that we can hit creatures with, or we can hold on to this in our hand, use the channel feature, which is discard, giving our commander a +1/+1 and deal 4 damage to target creature. Alright, so that's quite a few of the creatures here. We've got some pawns, we've got some backup, and we rounded out the troops a little bit there. So, what about a right-hand man? Somebody to back up this deck if our commander is just too expensive to get out after he's been or she's been taken out too many times. That's going to be Valduk. Alright, once we see all these different equipments that we have in here, he's going to end that thirst for her by finishing up the game. And what we can do with this, equip him with all these different things and create all those tokens, and then swing at our opponents, hopefully to wipe out anybody that is still holding on by a thread. Now, we want all of our creatures, including our commander, to be dressed for battle. So, let's suit on up. Using this section here and the next couple ones, we're going to take a look at some equipment that's going to help us out. This is going to be one of our best boys. Get it? Dog equipment. All right, we can reconfigure this guy, giving somebody +2/+2 and menace. Great for our commander, but the more important thing is it allows us to goad creatures our opponents control when he deals combat damage to that player. Basilisk Collar really makes people not want to defend against your creatures, but more importantly, when you're swinging out all the time, we need some life gain to keep our life above our opponents, or at least above that 0 threshold. Sword of Fire and Ice is going to give us +2/+2, pro red and pro blue. The one thing about this is it's a little bit of target removal with that 2 extra damage, and we get to draw some extra cards without having to discard. Sword of Sinew and Steel gives us a little bit of artifact control by allowing us to destroy artifacts on the field, and it gives us a little bit of planeswalker control too, so we can still swing at the opponent and wipe out artifacts and planeswalkers off the field. Sword of Light and Shadow is going to allow us to bring back some of those creatures that were early on great fodder for some of the attackers our opponents had. Also, it gives us a little bit of incremental life gain that's going to be fueling our archive that we saw earlier. All right, so there's some of our Dress for Battle cards, but we've still got a little bit more in store. Next on our list, we're going to start off with a artifact that gives or equipment that gives our creature flying and first strike. We want a little bit more evasion on our commander. She has that trample, but you put first strike, flying, and trample on your commander, there's very little that's going to be blocking that thing. Also, we can use this on any one of our other creatures to help finish out the field or the game. Sword of Once and Future. This +2/+2 pro blue, pro black equipment is going to allow us to surveil 2, moving things right into the graveyard if we don't need them, or it's going to allow us to cast some of those instant sorceries that we put into our graveyard. Keep in mind 2 CMC or less, but we've got quite a few of those in here. Following that, we're going to throw in another Sword of Wealth and Power. Protection from instant sorceries is a awesome addition to any deck, and when you're trying to protect that commander, this one's going to help us do that. In addition, we're going to be able to generate some extra tokens. Those are going to be treasure tokens in this case, and when we cast our next instant sorcery, we're going to be able to copy that, so we're going to get double it. For a lot of those cards that had discard as an actual effect, you don't have to pay that again. Now we've got this Battle Mace coming in here from the Lord of the Rings set. Why not give our commander some Annihilator, Menace, and Death Touch? Nobody likes sacrificing anything when you're attacking them, but if we throw this onto our commander, we can get some of those things out of the way in a mono red deck that are really hard for us to target. Alright, so we've been dressed for battle with a lot of these pieces of equipment. What else do we have on this list? Well, we're going to move away from the equipment section so much on the big buff side, and how about a little bit more protection side? This girl wants shoes for every occasion. So what do we start off with here? We've got Zephyr Boots, giving our commander, again, flying, so we got some evasion on her. Notice the discard and the draw feature on here. The discard is going to fuel the commander even more, and we're going to start digging through that deck. Swiftfoot Boots for that hexproof and haste. Sometimes we've had our commander out 3 or 4 times. We're trying to get her out one more time to finish off our opponents. Being able to give her haste and then some additional protection later on is going to be great. Lava Spur Boots is one of the newer ones. Equipped creature gets +1/+0, haste, and ward 1. So we got that haste feature again, a little bit of protection with that ward 1, and a small little boost. Lightning Greaves, oldie, and a classic. Although this does give our creature Shroud, so make sure you know how to unequip this, re-equip it, so you can do things in between. Trailblazer Boots is one more of those pieces of equipment that are going to allow us to get through where we need to. So if we don't have the flying, if our trampoline's having a hard time getting through, we'll throw some land walk on here with these Trailblazer Boots. These are all the boots or shoes that this girl has in her repertoire, but we can always equip these to any one of our other creatures. So if you need to get some extra damage on the battlefield, or get some things through, or protect somebody that's out there that you want to have out for the next turn and the next turn, these are the shoes that you need. Alright, outside of shoes for every occasion, we're going to move on over to another section, and this one is Out of My Way. If we want to attack, we've got our guys protected and suited up, we need to get stuff out of our way so we can get that damage on through. Renegade Tactics is a nice one that gives us a single creature on the battlefield that can't block just by targeting with this spell, and we get to draw a card. Go for Blood gives us the ability to fight, so we can get a creature out of the way permanently if we need to, or we can use the cycling to fuel our commander. Abrade gives us a couple different options with a target creature, 3 damage to it, or destroy target artifact. Switch between whatever one is beneficial in the moment. Collective Defiance allows us to actually escalate here so we can do more than one thing at a time. The first one on there is great, but we want to move on over to Chandra's Ignition. This is going to be our board wipe here that we need. This allows us to keep our creature out and then wipe the board of any creature whose power is less than the creature that we targeted. Hopefully our commander's got a bunch of counters on her. We're going to play that spell, wipe the battlefield, and then start swinging for lethal on people. Alright, Out of My Way still has a few more cards in its list, including Vandal Blast. Sometimes this is target removal, sometimes this is helping us get things out of the way, all the way out of our way. And we mean every piece of artifact on the field that is not ours. Brute Force, awesome battle tactic here, a battle trick. We like to give that +3/+3. Nobody expects to see this happen. Remember, our commander does have trample built into her, so this +3/+3 can be lethal. Lightning Axe is another one of those discard things that can fuel our commander. In addition to that, 5 straight up damage to whatever creature that we're going to target with this Lightning Axe. Following that, we've got Reckless Rage, dealing 2 damage to one of our own creatures, but 4 damage to target creature you don't control. This one right here might be a little bit pricey for an uncommon, but it is worth it. Alright, then we're going to wrap that Out of My Way 5-card section up there with Impact Resonance. This one right here allows us to deal X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures, where X is the greatest amount of damage dealt by a source to a permanent or player this turn. So we can swing with the commander, do a lot of damage, and then wipe some of their other creatures off the field. A few more cards here to wrap out this one. We've got Raking Claws. It gives a creature double strike. In addition to that, it does have cycling built into it if we want to discard it and fuel our commander. Shredded Sails gets a flyer out of the way or an artifact out of the way. Plus, it's got that innate cycling ability on it, so we can discard this, fuel our commander, and draw into something that's better for the current situation. Speaking of current situation, sometimes we need to stop by the camp, see who we need to get out of the way. Sometimes those are 2 creatures instead of 1, like that Renegade Tactics, so this will get 2 that can't block, or we can buff a creature. Wild Magic Surge gives us another way to get a permanent off the field. This is one of the few ways our red deck is going to be able to get enchantments off the battlefield, so you definitely want to include that in here. And now it's time for Rampage, with an emphasis on the ramp. We're not going to have a lot in here because our average CMC is going to be about 2 point something. So we're going to start off with an Arcane Signet, followed up with a Fire Diamond. A lot of these are going to come at 2 CMC here. Following that Fire Diamond, we're going to throw in the Ruby Medallion to get a constant -1 to any of our red spells. A Liquid Metal Torque, because we can make things into artifacts and destroy them, or get the mana out of this if we need to. And then finally, we're going to throw in the Soul Ring. Some tables don't like this, so if your table does not like that, feel free to swap it out for something else. Now, if that's our Rampage there, add into our ramp spells, what about some lands, please? Stewie knows it's good to have lands, so what are we invested in? A lot of our special lands are going to be those that cycle. Smoldering Crater cycles for 2. Remember that cycling does fuel our commander. Ash Barrens, we're going to cycle this one out, discarding it, go and get in a basic, find that mountain, throw it into play. Forgotten Cave is another one of the cycling lands that we have in red. We've got Desert of the Fervent as our final cycling card in red. And then we've got Gyre Reach. This allows each player to discard and draw a card using only 2 mana. Remember, you can do this at any time, so you might want to wait to the end of the opponent's turn right before you. With Bonder's Enclave, we have another way to draw. And then after that, we're going to do War Room. 1 more land that's going to allow us to draw extra cards. And then Great Furnace is an artifact land we're throwing in here because there are a few things that care about artifacts or that we can sacrifice artifacts to. They're going to wrap it up with some mountains. On average, you're going to be about 26, 27 mountains, depending on what kind of land base you already have. And that's going to put you at a total of about 34, 35 lands. So let's wrap this up. Judge Judy's calling it. Let's go on over and take a look at some stats. We've got 7+ ramp spells, depending on how you look at it. We've got 24 different card draw opportunities in this deck or more. 13 target removal, 2 board wipes, and then some card type breakdowns here. Finally, we got our mana curve showing us an average 2.28 for the cost. A lot of things coming in at under the 2 range. Here's one sample hand to take a quick glance at. We've got a second sample hand here, and let's wrap it up with a third sample hand. Finally, after that, let's close this on out. Thank you for stopping on by. We hope to see you next time. And remember, if you don't play mono red,